They told me the girl would be quiet. They didn't mention the scratching under her floorboards. I came to Black Hollow on a fog-choked morning in November. The trees leaned over the road like they were trying to keep something in, not out. My car's radio stopped working 30 miles before I reached the village. Static. Then silence. Then a whisper. A single word that made my hands tremble on the steering wheel. Return. Gravesend House sat at the edge of the woods, alone and brooding. Its roof sagged. The windows were long and narrow, like eyes that hadn't blinked in years. The locals wouldn't look at it when I passed. A few muttered prayers. One man spat on the ground and crossed himself. The girl, Eva, was 12 years old. Pale as paper. Dark eyes, darker thoughts. She didn't speak much. When she did, her voice was small, too small for the weight it carried. The first time I saw her, she was sitting at the top of the stairs, drawing with a broken red crayon on the wall. Not on paper. On the wall. A spiral with jagged teeth, like a screaming mouth. She didn't even look at me when I walked in. Just whispered under her breath. It's listening. I froze. What is? I asked. Eva didn't answer. She went back to drawing, the crayon moving faster. I was assigned to be her guardian by an order that doesn't exist anymore. After the Baltimore possession, after what I did, I was buried. The church didn't defrock me as much as they erased me. Said if I wanted redemption, I'd find it watching over this girl. They didn't tell me she was born during a blood moon, or that her mother bled to death screaming the Lord's Prayer backwards. They only said, keep her from waking it. The room they gave me was in the basement. Damp stone walls. One small cot. My books. My relics. My journal. A locked trunk with the things no man should ever need to use. I spend most of my time watching. Listening. Every night I check the wards, sigils carved into the foundation, runes chalked beneath her bed. I light the candles, burn the incense, whisper the psalms I still remember. And still the scratching comes. At first I thought it was rats. Set traps. Poison. Nothing helped. Then one night, I followed the sound. It wasn't coming from under the floorboards. It was coming from inside the walls. I pressed my ear to the plaster and heard breathing. Not hers. Too deep. Too wet. And then it spoke, barely a whisper. She's mine. That was a week ago. Last night, Eva woke up screaming in a language I couldn't understand. Her eyes rolled back. Her fingers clawed at the air, like she was fighting something only she could see. And when it passed, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. I don't want to be bad, she whispered. Neither do I, little one. But I've seen this before. The spiral she drew on the wall, it wasn't random. It's a seal. An invitation. She doesn't know what she's doing. Not yet. But the demon inside her is waking up. And I don't know how much longer I can stop it. They say the sky turned red the night she was born. I wasn't there, not yet. But I've read every report, every file the church kept locked away. I've listened to the audio tapes. Some of them still play whispers, even when the reels stop spinning. The delivery nurse, Maria Elson, wrote in her journal that the moon bled like an open wound, and she swore the walls of the hospital pulsed, like they were breathing. Eva came into this world in silence. No crying, no screaming, no wailing that most newborns do when the cold air hits their lungs. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hold your breath, like the world is waiting for something else to arrive. Her twin brother didn't make it. Stillborn. Wrapped in a strange black membrane, like a second layer of skin. Doctors couldn't explain it. They said it looked like charcoal-colored silk, thin and slick, almost impossible to tear. It vanished before it reached the lab. Just dissolved. The nurse who cut the cord went home that night and slit her own throat in the bathtub. I've read her suicide note. It was a single sentence. It followed her out. I arrived in Black Hollow 2 weeks after that. The church didn't send me directly. They wanted distance. I was already something of a ghost in their records. After Baltimore, they wiped my name from most of the exorcism archives. Too many questions. Too much failure. But someone high up, someone who still believed in the old ways, slipped me the case and a simple message. Guard the girl. Never let her awaken. Gravesend House was already in their hands. Old, decaying, and sitting on a place the locals called Hollow Root. The earth there is black and never grows anything but thornbrush. The church reinforced the foundation with iron crosses, buried holy soil around the perimeter, and carved Latin words into the walls behind the wallpaper. You wouldn't notice unless you peeled it back. Eva was brought there as an infant. I moved into the basement shortly after. I've been here ever since. She's 12 now. She's a quiet child. Doesn't talk much, never throws tantrums. She keeps to herself, draws a lot. I let her roam the house, but she never goes near the attic or the basement. I told her it's dangerous. She listened. For years, she was just a kid. A little odd maybe, but innocent. Until last week. It started with her drawings. Not flowers or houses or sunshines. She started sketching symbols, circles within circles, spiked shapes, runes that I recognized from an ancient text I hoped never to see again. Then came the whispers. I caught her outside, standing barefoot in the frost. Her eyes were closed, lips moving, but no sound came out. I listened close, and I swear on everything holy, there were whispers in the air around her, speaking back. Not in English. Not in any language that should exist. That same night, I checked the wards. The one above her bedroom window, the most important one, was gone. Not scratched off. Not smeared. Gone. Like it was never there. The iron nails meant to anchor the charm were bent outward, like something pushed from the other side. And then there was the crow. It flew straight into her window. Not once. 5 times. Over and over, smashing its beak into the glass, until it cracked its skull open and fell dead into the snow. Eva didn't scream. She just stood at the window and watched it die. When I asked her what she saw, she looked at me with those big, glassy eyes and said, "I think it was trying to warn me." That sentence hasn't left my mind since. I've begun reinforcing the sigils again, replacing every chalk mark, every relic, every line of scripture. But something's different this time. The tools feel weaker. The holy water sizzles when I drop it on the windowsills. My rosary chain has started to rust. The paintings of the saints in the hallway seem to be fading, like their eyes can't bear to look at her anymore. Eva doesn't know. At least, I think she doesn't. But the demon inside her? It's stirring. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not sure I can keep it asleep. I woke to the sound of soft scratching. At first, I thought it was the wind dragging branches across the side of Gravesend House, like it often did. But this was different. It was too slow, too deliberate, like fingertips dragging across a door. I sat up on the cot in the basement, reaching for the flashlight I kept next to the Bible and the flask. My bones ached as I stood. Another sleepless night, I thought. Or maybe I was just getting too old to be chasing demons in the dark. I climbed the narrow wooden steps, careful not to step on the third one. It creaks and echoes through the whole house. The scratching stopped the moment I reached the main floor. Silence settled, thick and choking. I turned toward the hallway leading to Eva's room. The flashlight beam flickered as I walked, barely lighting the faded wallpaper and warped floorboards. Her door was wide open. Eva wasn't in her bed. The sheets were tangled, pushed to the side like someone had gotten up in a hurry. Her small slippers were still neatly placed beneath the edge of the bed. My gut twisted. I whispered her name. "Eva?" No answer. Just that low hum. The house sometimes made noises, pipes groaning, walls settling. But this sound was different. It came from nowhere and everywhere, vibrating in my teeth. I checked the hallway windows. One was open. Cold air poured in, along with a light dusting of snow. She'd gone outside. I grabbed my coat from the wall hook and ran out into the yard, boots crunching through the fresh layer of white. The trees loomed like frozen giants, their black limbs reaching in all directions. The moon was pale and full, hanging above the treetops like a single blind eye. And then I saw her. Eva stood at the edge of the woods. She wore her nightgown, thin and almost glowing in the moonlight. Her bare feet sank into the snow, but she didn't flinch. Her head tilted back, and her arms were slightly raised at her sides, as if she were listening to something above the trees. I called her name again, louder this time. "Eva!" She didn't move. I ran toward her, breath fogging in the air, heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. "Eva, look at me." Still nothing. I grabbed her shoulders gently but firmly. Her skin was ice cold. Her eyes snapped open. They weren't her usual soft hazel. They were dark, pupils blown wide, no color left at all. And then she spoke. But it wasn't her voice. It was deeper, older, like it had traveled across time just to whisper in my ear. "Watch her." That was all it said. One word. Watch her. I stared into her face. For a moment, I thought I saw something moving behind her eyes, like a shadow swimming just beneath the surface. Then, as suddenly as it came, it vanished. Her eyes returned to normal. She blinked, confused. "Alan," she whispered. "Why are we outside?" I didn't answer right away. I just pulled off my coat and wrapped it around her, lifting her into my arms. She clung to me, shaking now. The cold finally touched her. "I was dreaming," she mumbled against my neck. There was a door, but it wasn't a real door. It was inside my head. I didn't say anything. I just carried her back into the house. But I knew something had changed. Something had looked back through her, and now it knew I was watching. They say strangers don't last long in Black Hollow. The cold drives them out, or the silence eats at them until they run. But this one, he came prepared. I first saw him during the Sunday morning service at the crumbling chapel near Town Square. I wasn't there for prayer. I hadn't prayed in years. I was there to keep an eye on the townsfolk, make sure no one was getting too curious about Eva or the strange symbols burned into the bark of trees just outside their windows. He sat 2 pews ahead of me, middle-aged, lean but strong. Gray hair slicked back like a preacher, dark eyes that didn't blink much. His suit was crisp, black as coal, not a speck of dust on it, which told me 2 things. He hadn't walked the forest path to get here, and he'd only just arrived. That suit hadn't seen Black Hollow dirt. But what got me wasn't the clothes, or the way he held his spine like a blade. It was the feeling in my gut. The same cold pull I felt back in Baltimore, just before the boy's eyes rolled back, and he spoke with a voice that wasn't his. This man carried something with him. After service, he stood by the chapel door, shaking hands like he belonged. I stayed back watching, listening. "Perez Langley," he said, smiling at each person. "Just visiting. Always had a fascination with old towns like this. So much untouched history." Untouched. That word crawled down my spine. I followed him, careful not to be seen. He walked with purpose, like he already knew the roads. No hesitation. No curiosity. That wasn't a tourist. That was a man who'd been here before in some form. He headed toward the abandoned schoolhouse, long shut down after the ceiling caved in during a storm. But now there were faint lights inside. I crouched behind the fence as he unlocked the door with a rusted key. He didn't force it. He unlocked it. Someone had left that for him. Later that day, I stopped by the general store. Lucille, the old woman who ran the place, was whispering with 2 others. Her voice dropped when I entered, but I caught enough. "He's holding a talk tomorrow night. History of the occult in early New England. Said he's a professor." "Where?" I asked, playing dumb. She hesitated. "Schoolhouse. 7 o'clock. Of course he was. That night, I went back to Gravesend and pulled out my journal. I hadn't opened it in weeks. My hands shook as I turned the pages. Notes on demons, protection sigils, names that shouldn't be spoken. On page 47, I found it, Perez Langley. Former professor at St. Dumas University. Expert in pre-Christian cults. Excommunicated. Disappeared after rumors surfaced of a ritual gone wrong. No body. No charges. Just gone. Until now. Eva was humming to herself upstairs. I heard her voice through the floorboards, soft, tuneless, but laced with something off. Every few beats, her pitch slipped into a note that didn't belong to this world. I pressed my palm to the old wood. It was cold. Colder than it should have been. She was changing. And now so was the town. They always say evil knocks. But Perez didn't knock. He walked right in and made himself at home. It started with a question over breakfast. Eva stirred her oatmeal slowly, as if waiting for it to answer something unspoken. The morning light was thin and pale, struggling through the frost-covered windows of Gravesend House. I was halfway through my black coffee when she looked up at me, eyes unreadable. "Do you think souls can split, Alan?" I froze. My spoon clinked too loud against the bowl. I kept my face still, careful not to show anything. "Where'd you hear that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She shrugged, still watching me. Her long dark hair hung over her face like curtains. "I don't know. I just wondered. Sometimes I feel like I'm not alone in here." She tapped her chest with one small finger. I nodded slowly and forced a thin smile. "You're not. I'm here." She smiled too, but it didn't reach her eyes. Later that day, when she went to nap, I returned to my journal, but something tugged at me. A strange unease, like a draft slipping under a locked door. I went into her room while she slept. It felt wrong, like invading a sacred place. But I had learned the hard way that when instincts speak, you listen. Her room was simple, too simple. No toys, just a small wooden bed, a desk with colored pencils, and a book of fairy tales. A crucifix hung above her pillow, and the window had iron nails hammered into the frame. But the strange part was under the floor. The wooden floorboard near the corner rug had been shifted, very slightly. Not loose, just not quite right. I knelt and pressed gently. It moved with a soft creak. Beneath it was a hollow space. And in that space was a notebook. I stared at it for a moment, like it might bite me. It was black leather, rough and worn, with no markings on the cover. My hands shook a little as I opened it. The first page held a single word. Velashta. I didn't know what it meant, but I had heard it before. In dreams. In rituals. And once, just once, during an exorcism in Ecuador that ended with 2 bodies and a burned church. I flipped through the pages. Drawings. Dozens of them. Circles within circles, jagged lines, spirals made from something that looked disturbingly like dried blood. She had drawn sigils, and not childish ones either. These were precise, almost etched. And in the margins, Latin, some of it backwards, some of it inverted. Phrases like, Spiritus divide, hostis intus, apri meum cor, the spirit divides, the enemy is within, open my heart. The notebook dropped from my hands. This wasn't just a child doodling nightmares. This was someone channeling something. I glanced at the bed. She was still asleep, lips parted, breathing gently. I backed out of the room and closed the door, my heart thudding against my ribs. I took the notebook downstairs into the basement, where my altar stood, a slab of stone marked with protective runes and blessed in Rome. I placed the notebook on it and lit a candle. Then I began the detection rite. The flame flickered unnaturally. The symbols in the book began to shimmer. Slowly, almost like breathing. When I sprinkled the holy water, the book hissed. The candle blew out on its own. It wasn't just dark magic, it was living. That night, I confronted her. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I simply asked, Eva, do you remember writing anything lately? Maybe dreams you wrote down? Pictures? She tilted her head. No. Why? Her eyes were clear. Honest. But behind them, something watched me. Something patient. Something old. She looked down at her hands. Sometimes I wake up and my fingers hurt, like I've been holding a pencil too long. But I don't remember drawing anything. A chill ran through me. Not fear. Not quite. More like grief. She wasn't lying. She truly didn't remember. Whatever was waking inside her, it was using her body. Quietly. Carefully. I smiled gently and told her not to worry. She hugged me that night before bed, held me tighter than usual, and whispered, "Thank you for keeping me safe." And all I could do was whisper back, "I'm trying." Because the truth I didn't have the courage to say out loud was this. I don't know if I'm protecting Eva from the demon anymore. I think I might be protecting the world from her. The first thing I noticed was the smell, burned wood and sulfur. It hit me like a punch to the chest the moment I opened the attic door. I took the steps 2 at a time, my flashlight flickering in my grip. Up there, beneath the slanted roof and sagging beams, something was wrong. My wards, protective symbols carved into old cedar and lined with salt, had always held strong. I checked them weekly. I prayed over them monthly. But now one was gone. Charred black. Split down the center, like something had clawed through it. I crouched beside the ruined sigil, my fingers hovering over the edge. The wood still radiated heat. Whatever had done this hadn't come from outside. It had come from within. That chilled me more than the wind slipping through the cracks in the roof. I didn't hear Eva approach. "Is it broken?" she asked, her voice soft and shaky. She stood in her nightgown, barefoot, her tangled hair clinging to her face. I moved quickly, blocking her view. "It's nothing," I lied. "Just old wood." Eva tilted her head like she didn't believe me. Her eyes looked darker than usual, like shadows were nesting behind them. "I had a dream last night," she whispered. "A bird flew into my chest. It screamed so loud it made my bones crack." I didn't know what to say to that. Instead, I walked her downstairs, poured her warm milk, and told her to sleep. But sleep was no longer simple in this house. Not for her. Not for me. After she was settled, I walked the perimeter of the house. Midnight frost coated the windows. The moon hung low, yellow like rotting teeth. That's when I saw it. Nailed to the front door with something rusted and twisted, a heart. Still fresh. Still bleeding. I froze. My breath came in slow, visible clouds. A goat's heart. I'd seen it before. A summoning tool, part of a ritual meant to invite rather than repel. This wasn't just vandalism. It was a warning. Or worse, an invitation. I tore it down and buried it in the snow behind the house. The snow sizzled where it touched the flesh. Back inside, I scrubbed my hands until they bled. Then I sat in the basement with my old books, flipping page after page until I found what I already feared. Perez. I was sure now. This had his stink all over it. I'd read about his techniques in hidden Vatican reports. Always the same. isolate the vessel, weaken the protections, offer power to desperate villagers. And then, awaken. I had to know if he was truly here. So I left Eva asleep, set every protection I knew around her room, and headed into the woods. The path behind the house led deep into the forest. Trees groaned in the wind like they remembered things better left forgotten. My flashlight blinked out once, then came back on, weaker than before. I walked for nearly an hour before I saw the glow. Firelight. A circle of torches. People. Hooded. Kneeling. And in the center, Perez Langley. He wore a white coat stained with something dark, and around his neck was a chain with a black stone pendant. He was speaking, but not in English. Not even in Latin. Something older. Something wrong. I crouched behind a tree, barely breathing. Then I heard it. Eva's name. He spoke it slowly, like he was feeding it to the earth. And the torches flared higher. I backed away. Quiet. Careful. But a twig snapped under my boot. Perez stopped speaking. His head turned. And even from that distance, I swear, he looked straight at me. I ran. Didn't stop until I reached the house, heart slamming against my ribs. Inside, I bolted every door, reinforced the wards, prayed until my knees went numb. Eva was still asleep. But as I looked at her from the doorway, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. On the wall above her bed, scratched into the plaster, was the same symbol Perez had drawn in the forest. She had no memory of doing it. But her nails were worn to the skin. Something was waking up, and we were running out of time. The snow had thickened again overnight. It clung to the windows of Gravesend like mold, choking out the morning light. I sat by the fireplace in the parlor, the flames low, casting long shadows on the faded wallpaper. Eva was asleep upstairs, her breathing shallow but steady. I could still hear it through the floorboards. But I couldn't rest. Something had shifted since the incident in the attic, when the sigil exploded and nearly took half the rafters with it. The wards weren't holding anymore, and the house, it felt like it was stirring with things I didn't yet understand. I stared at the painting above the mantel. It was old and cracked, a family portrait of the original owners. The man in the center, Reverend Hollis Gravesend, had cold gray eyes and a stiff, unnatural smile. His hands rested on the shoulders of two children, both with matching black curls and pale faces. I never liked that painting. But that morning, I noticed something I hadn't before, the outline of a ring on the Reverend's finger. A ring with the same triangle inside a circle symbol Eva had drawn in her sleep last week. Something clicked in my head. I stood, grabbed the iron key ring from the drawer, and went down to the cellar. Past the shelves of old canned food, beneath the creaky stairs, there was a door with no knob, just a single rusted keyhole. I had tried opening it before, but the key had always jammed. This time I forced it. Something inside snapped, and the door groaned open. The air was thick and stale. Dust floated in the flashlight beam like ash. The room was a narrow hallway lined with cabinets and locked drawers. At the end stood a large armoire covered with a heavy cloth. I pulled it off. Inside were records, ledgers, old journals, thick books bound in leather. I flipped through one. The ink was faded, the handwriting tight and neat. Reverend Hollis's signature was at the bottom of every page. He recorded births, deaths, baptisms, and rituals. What I read chilled me. Gravesend had been more than a priest. He was a gatekeeper. He believed the bloodline of the town held a sacred rot, a rare line of flesh born to house things that shouldn't exist in this world. He had been searching for the perfect vessel. Most were born weak, others died screaming. But once every few generations, a child survived. Eva wasn't cursed. She was bred. I kept reading, flipping pages faster now. Dates lined up. Locations. Even the manor itself had been built on a convergence point, where ley lines crossed and the soil was thin. The last vessel, a girl named Madeline, had been born in 1842. She disappeared at age 10. Hollis's last entry was simple. Too strong. Tried to contain it in the well. Her body sings at night. My blood turned to ice. I grabbed my flashlight and a shovel from the tool shed and made my way to the chapel ruins behind the house. The snow was knee-deep, but I found the well easily. It was old, made of black stones, and sealed with a rusted grate. I pried it open and shone the beam down. The light caught something white beneath the moss and darkness. Bones. Small. A child's skull, mouth still open. I dropped the flashlight. For a long while, I just stood there, the cold biting my fingers, my breath clouding the air. I had thought I was protecting Eva from a demon. But now I knew, this wasn't just her burden. It was the houses. The lands. It had been waiting for her, just as it had waited for Madeline. Gravesend House didn't need a guest. It wanted a host. And now, the host was waking up. It started with the silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the quiet you get when snow falls heavy on the ground. This was different. It pressed against my ears like water, thick and unnatural. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl before your brain can explain why. Eva had been quiet all morning. Not unusual. She was always more thoughtful than talkative. But this time, her silence didn't feel like thoughtfulness. It felt like distance, like she was walking further and further away, even while sitting right across from me. She sat in the parlor, knees tucked to her chest, staring at the frost-covered window. Her fingers moved lazily over a worn piece of paper. She was drawing again. I didn't pay much attention at first. I'd seen her scribble odd shapes before. Strange loops. Tiny faces. Sometimes full scenes of things she shouldn't have known. But today, there was a calm to her hand. A rhythm. Like she wasn't creating, just remembering. I looked over her shoulder. My stomach dropped. She'd drawn the stone circle in the forest. The one Perez used for his gatherings. The one no map showed, no history book named. Every moss-covered stone was in place. Every root twisting beneath it. Even the carved symbols, the old ones etched deep into the rock, were perfect. Eva shouldn't have known it existed. Where did you see this? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the window. Her lips moved slightly, like she was humming without sound. I reached for the paper, intending to take it. But the moment my fingers touched the edge, her hand snapped forward and grabbed my wrist. Hard. Her grip was stronger than it should have been. Her fingers dug into my skin like claws. I met her gaze, and what I saw there wasn't Eva. Not fully. Her pupils were huge, eating away at the color in her eyes. Black, deep, endless. But worse were the veins, faint, glowing veins stretching across the whites of her eyes, pulsing like something alive beneath the surface. Let go, Eva, I said quietly. You'll burn it, she said flatly. Her voice was layered, hers and something beneath it. A second voice, crawling beneath her words like rot beneath fresh wood. I have to, I said. It's dangerous. She tilted her head. Do you burn what you fear, Father Allen? Or what you don't understand? I froze. No one had called me that in years. Not even Eva. Not even after all the times I'd slipped and referred to myself that way out of habit. She let go. Just like that. Her hand dropped to her lap, and she went back to staring out the window, as if nothing had happened. I backed away slowly, paper still in my hand, heart pounding like a hammer in a coffin. I brought the drawing to the basement. Lit a match. As the flames touched the paper, I heard it. A scream. Not in the room. In my head. Like someone screaming underwater. It wasn't Eva's voice. It was older. Thicker. Crueler. The paper crumpled into ash, but the air didn't feel lighter. It felt heavier. When I climbed back upstairs, Eva was waiting in the hallway. She stood motionless, hands by her sides. Her nose was bleeding. Just a thin trickle, like something inside her had popped. I didn't mean to draw it, she whispered. I swallowed. Then why did you? She shook her head slowly. I see things when I sleep. Places I've never been. Voices telling me what to do. I don't understand the words, but I know what they mean. I knelt in front of her. Eva, listen to me. That thing inside you, it's waking up. It's pushing through your thoughts. You have to fight it. Her lips trembled. But what if it's not a thing, Alan? What if it's me? She collapsed into my arms before I could answer. She cried like a child again, burying her face into my coat, her body shaking. I held her tight, but I couldn't stop the chill that crawled up my spine. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure anymore where Eva ended, and where the demon began. Not sure at all. I hadn't slept in 3 days. Not the kind of tired where your eyes droop and you yawn a lot. I mean bone-deep, mind-numbing exhaustion. The kind where you start hearing things that aren't there. Whispers under the floor. Breathing behind closed doors. A child humming a lullaby when she's supposed to be asleep. Eva hadn't spoken since the incident 2 nights ago. Since her eyes turned black and she called me by the name only one other soul, dead for decades, had ever used. I tried talking to her, but she just sat on her bed, staring out the window like the trees had secrets only she could hear. Her drawings were getting worse. One of them had a symbol that made my nose bleed just from looking at it too long. The house didn't feel like it used to. The walls had gone quiet. Too quiet. No creaks. No groans. Even the rats in the attic had stopped scratching. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath. And so was I. I stepped out just after sundown. The village chapel bell rang 3 times, low, slow, and off-tempo. It wasn't Sunday. It wasn't time for Mass. But people were gathering anyway. At the edge of town, where the schoolhouse had stood abandoned for years, I saw torches. Torches. Not flashlights, not lanterns, actual fire. Like something out of a movie or a medieval nightmare. I kept to the trees, watching from the shadows. Perez stood in the middle, arms spread wide, preaching to the crowd like some kind of prophet. Her time is near, he said, voice smooth like silk dipped in poison. The vessel stirs. The false guardian weakens. They cheered. I counted at least 30 of them. Faces I'd known for years. The butcher. The gas station owner. Even Mrs. Harrow, the retired schoolteacher who used to bake cookies for Eva. I felt something crack in my chest. Like betrayal and rage and despair had all fused into one. Perez held up a book. Bound in flesh. Stamped with the sigil I'd first seen in Rome, on a case that still gives me nightmares. He flipped it open and read in a voice that wasn't his. The words weren't human. They didn't echo in the air, they echoed inside me. Then he looked straight into the forest. Straight at me. I backed away slowly. His smile followed me long after I couldn't see it anymore. When I returned to Gravesend House, something felt wrong before I even touched the door. The wards carved into the frame were gone. Scratched off. Burned. My heartbeat slammed in my ears. I shoved the door open. Silence. The lamps were all blown out. The hallway smelled like burnt hair and iron. Eva? I called out. Eva! No answer. I ran up the stairs 2 at a time, nearly tripping. Her bedroom door was open. And inside, blood. Everywhere. Smeared across the walls in spirals. Dripping from the ceiling. Her bed torn apart. Feathers floating in the air like falling snow. At the center of the room, a message written in red. She is mine now. You were never her guardian. Just her cage. My stomach turned. I dropped to my knees, dizzy, heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to break out. I crawled to the center of the room and found her necklace. The silver one with the tiny cross she wore every day since she was 5. It was snapped in half. Still warm. Perez had taken her. And this time, I knew exactly what he planned to do. I stumbled back downstairs, nearly falling over the railing. My breath came in gasps. I opened the safe behind the fireplace and grabbed the relics, holy water, the binding sigil, the old blade blessed in salt and ash. Then I opened my journal, flipped to the last page, and wrote one line. If I don't return, burn this place to the ground. No signature. No instructions. Just that. Because if I failed, this house would become a gateway. A permanent crack in the veil. And Black Hollow would never be seen again. I stepped outside. The fog was thicker than usual. It wrapped around the trees like a living thing. I could hear chanting in the distance. And under it all, faint but rising, was a little girl's voice. Calling my name. Alan. Not in fear. Not in pain. In hunger. She was waking up. And Perez was feeding her. The silence inside Gravesend House wasn't just quiet. It was hollow, like something sacred had been ripped out of the air. I stood in the doorway of Eva's room, staring at the mess. Her bed was torn apart, sheets soaked in something dark, thicker than blood, almost black. The walls were covered in jagged symbols painted with trembling hands. They pulsed in the candlelight, like veins under pale skin. Eva was gone. I didn't scream. I didn't pray. I just moved. I reached under my coat and pulled out the old brass key, cold and worn smooth from years of use. It was time to go beneath. Time to find the place even the church pretended didn't exist. At the end of the hallway, behind a shelf of rotting books, there was a narrow door. Most people would miss it. Hell, I almost missed it the first time I searched the manor. It groaned open to reveal a spiral staircase made of stone and rusted iron. The air that rose from below smelled like mold and ancient secrets. I took one last breath and started down. My flashlight flickered. Of course it did. These tunnels were old, built before Gravesend House even stood. Some said smugglers used them. Others believed the bishop who built the original chapel created them as escape routes or sanctuaries. But I knew better. They were carved for worship. Dark worship. As I descended deeper, the narrow stone walls seemed to close in on me. I passed carvings I couldn't read, eyes, teeth, and spirals. A woman's face stretched into a scream, chiseled into the rock. I didn't stop to stare. That's how they catch you. After what felt like hours, the stairs ended. I stepped into a tunnel. Damp. Cold. My boots splashed in shallow puddles. I followed the sound. Low chanting. Echoing. Getting louder. I turned a corner and nearly dropped the flashlight. A massive underground chapel opened before me, built from black stone and twisted wood. Candles lined the walls, burning blue. And there, at the center, was her. Eva floated above a stone altar, arms outstretched like a crucifixion. Her eyes were open, but they saw nothing. Her mouth moved in slow rhythm, whispering in a language no child should know. And beside her stood Perez. He wore a long coat stitched with human hair. Around his neck, the broken rosary I once gave Eva, now smeared with blood. "You're late," he said without turning. "She's beautiful, isn't she? The first true vessel to last this long. She hasn't even screamed yet." I stepped closer, but two cultists blocked my path. Perez continued, voice smooth like oil on water. "She's been dreaming of him since birth, Alan. Don't you see? You were never guarding her. You were preparing her." I gritted my teeth. "She's a child. Not your sacrifice." He turned to face me. His eyes were dark, but something flickered inside them, something ancient. "She's not the sacrifice," he said with a grin. "I am." And then it clicked. The circle of salt. The carved sigils. The chanting. He wasn't just trying to summon the demon. He was trying to become it. Perez stepped up onto the altar, lifting a black-bladed dagger. "When my blood touches hers, we merge. Flesh and flame. Mind and monster." I felt the old relic in my coat pocket, a brass pendant etched with the seal of Solomon. One of the few tools left that could trap a spirit. But it had to be close. And it had to be willing. Eva's body trembled. Her mouth stopped moving. And then her head turned toward me, eyes no longer vacant. "Alan," she whispered. She was still in there. Still fighting. That was enough. I shoved the relic into my palm, whispered a binding verse under my breath, and ran forward. I didn't care about the cultists. One tackled me. I punched. Something cracked. Perez raised the dagger. Eva screamed. I dove. My hand hit the altar just as the blade fell. A flash of light. Then nothing but fire. It wasn't real fire, at least not in the way the world knows it. It burned through memory, through bone, through the idea of who I was. I stood in a place that had no floor, no sky. Only voices. The demon was there. It spoke like thunder swallowing itself. "You offer yourself instead?" "Yes," I whispered. "Take me. Let her go." There was silence. Then laughter. But it agreed. The flames died. I woke up on the stone floor. The chapel was collapsing, walls cracking, candles blown out. Perez's body lay twisted and burned. Eva sat on the altar, coughing, crying, eyes clear. I reached for her, but my hand passed through hers like smoke. She looked at me. "Alan?" I smiled. "You're safe now." And then I faded, my soul burning into the relic still clutched in her hand. I had become the new prison. But she was free. And somewhere deep in the earth, beneath Gravesend House, I remain. Watching. Guarding. Waiting. The tunnel walls were slick with damp moss and old blood. I could smell it before I saw anything, iron, rot, and burnt sage. The air grew colder with every step, and my flashlight flickered like it was afraid too. Beneath Gravesend House, this place felt ancient. Forgotten. The stairs groaned under my boots, and I gripped the last relic I had left, an iron crucifix etched with runes in a language I swore never to speak again. The chapel was at the end of the tunnel. But it wasn't the same chapel I had read about in the manor's records. It was larger, carved directly into the stone. Crumbling pillars surrounded the altar, and above it, a great blackened mural showed a beast with horns, wings, and 1,000 watching eyes. Candles lined the walls in perfect symmetry, their flames steady despite the draft. And there, floating above the cracked altar, was Eva. Her body hovered, arms stretched out like she was being pulled by invisible strings. Her hair floated around her head, like she was underwater. Her eyes were closed, but her lips moved, whispering something I couldn't hear yet. Her skin glowed faintly, like the light was coming from inside her. Perez stood below her in a dark robe, arms lifted high, soaked in crimson up to his elbows. His face lit up like a man seeing God. "Eva!" I shouted. Perez turned, and I saw something in his eyes, madness, yes, but also clarity. Like he truly believed this was right. "Holy even. She's almost ready," he said calmly. "Do you feel it, Alan? The veil thinning? The child is the gate." I raised the crucifix and stepped forward. My hand was shaking. "Let her go." "I can't. And neither can you." He smiled sadly, like I was a child who didn't understand a hard truth. "She's more than a girl now. She's a vessel. The last one. The only one that survived. When the demon wakes fully, it won't just live inside her. It will be her. The merger will be complete. I felt it then, a vibration in the air, deep and low, like the earth itself was growling. Eva opened her eyes. They weren't hers anymore. No whites. Just black, rippling like oil across the surface of a still lake. Her lips stopped moving. She turned her head slowly to me. Her mouth opened, and the voice that came out wasn't hers. Alan. It said my name like it knew it from a lifetime ago. A voice that came from under the earth. From somewhere cold and endless. I stepped back, knees weak. Eva, fight it. You're stronger than it. She can't hear you, Perez said, stepping closer to her. But I can. And I want you to witness this. I want you to see what she becomes. No, I whispered. I do this willingly, he continued. I've made the pact. My soul in exchange for passage. When the merger begins, the demon will need one life to step forward through. One soul to consume. Mine is ready. He bared his chest, where a blood-drawn sigil pulsed faintly. He was going to die on purpose. Sacrifice himself to give the demon full control of Eva's body. I won't let that happen, I said. Perez laughed. You're out of time. Out of relics. Out of prayers. He was right. But I had one thing left. Myself. I dropped the crucifix and pulled the binding scroll from my coat. The old rite. The one I never used because it demands a price, a willing vessel. I tore it open. The parchment began to glow. Perez's smile faltered. Alan, no. I offer myself, I said. The room went silent. Even the demon hesitated. I offer my body. My name. My soul. The scroll ignited in white flame. My chest burned as if fire was carving through my ribs. I screamed, but didn't stop. The wind roared. The candles blew out. And then Eva fell. Straight into my arms. She was sobbing. Herself again. The demon rushed at me like a wave. Cold and ancient and full of rage. I took it in. Every bit of it. My body shook, bones cracking. I bit down on my own scream until blood filled my mouth. Perez ran. Coward. He tried to escape down the tunnel, but the ground split beneath him. A clawed hand, mine, but not, reached from the shadows and dragged him into the pit. Then the world cracked open. Stone fell. Fire burst through the walls. The chapel collapsed. But Eva was safe. I held her close and whispered her name again and again until the light faded from my eyes. Now I linger. Not alive. Not dead. Just here. Watching. Waiting. For the day the girl might need me again. I had seconds to decide. Eva hovered above the altar, eyes rolled back, her lips whispering something not meant for this world. Her small body trembled, but she wasn't cold. The air was burning hot around her, thick with the smell of sulfur and blood. Behind her, Perez stood tall, arms raised, soaked in sweat and ritual ink, chanting in a dead tongue as the circle of fire around them roared louder. The demon was nearly here. It pressed at the veil like wet fingers on glass. I could feel it, its hunger, its delight. It didn't want to kill Eva. It wanted to become her. Perez locked eyes with me as I stepped into the chapel. His face, once refined and smug, now twisted with something unholy, his mouth too wide, his pupils gone red. You're too late, he said, voice layered with another deeper voice beneath it. She's opened the gate willingly. She is ready. I aimed the silver relic at him, the one carved with ancient scripture and soaked in holy oil. My hand shook. Then take me instead, I said. Perez tilted his head. What? I stepped into the circle. The fire parted for me. Eva's voice stuttered. You want a vessel? Take mine. I offer it freely. Perez laughed. You? The defrocked priest? You're broken. Hollow. Not even the church wanted you. That's exactly why I'm perfect, I said. You'll have no rules to follow. No chains. Just a ruined man with nothing left. A silence fell. Then I heard it. A laugh, not from Perez. Not from Eva. From inside the chapel walls. It came from the cracks in the stone. From the dust in the air. From the candle flames themselves. It wasn't a voice you heard. It was a voice you felt. In your bones. In your blood. It accepted. My knees hit the ground as a shadow peeled itself from Eva's body and stretched toward me. It was smoke, but it moved like liquid. It entered through my mouth, my nose, my eyes. My head felt like it split in half. I saw things, cities burning, children crying, angels weeping. I saw my past. My sins. And something worse. I saw myself smiling. But then I remembered Eva. Her drawings. Her laughter. Her voice asking me to read her a bedtime story just 3 nights ago. I remembered the way she gripped my hand when she had nightmares. I remembered her as a child, not as a vessel. That gave me strength. The relic in my hand flared. It pulsed with holy light from inside my jacket. I ripped it out, and as I held it to my chest, I whispered the last words of the binding rite, a ritual I wasn't supposed to know. A ritual only used when you had nothing left to lose. The light from the relic burst outward like the sun. Perez screamed. His skin cracked like porcelain, and something black poured from his mouth before he collapsed into ash. Eva dropped from the air like a puppet with cut strings. And I saw everything go white. Then black. Then nothing. When I woke, it was night. Or what felt like night. But there was no sky. No ground. Only shadows. Endless shadows. And the whispering. I was no longer in my body. I was in the relic. Or maybe it was in me. I don't really know. But I could see her, Eva, safe, breathing, crying into Sister Marlene's arms as they pulled her from the rubble. The chapel had collapsed after the ritual. Gravesend House would later be condemned. The church would bury the truth once again. But Eva lived. And I stayed behind. Now I'm the thing that watches. I live in the walls of the manor. I hear every creak. I follow every whisper. I keep the doors locked at night. The relic, sealed beneath the floorboards of the old chapel, glows faintly. Eva visits sometimes. She talks to the empty air. Thank you, she whispers. I still draw. I still remember you. That's enough. She has a life now. A chance. And I am the candle in the dark. Still burning. Still watching. So she never has to again.